Hello Whisky fans, and welcome to another A-B comparison video. This time it's going to be a head-to-head-to-head tasting video, because this time I've got Jack Daniel's Old No. 7 in this glass here, and I don't have a bottle behind it because I've actually got this out. I've borrowed it from a friend's bottle because, to be honest, I don't like Old No. 7 and I don't want to buy a whole bottle or even a miniature. And on the second spot I've got Jack Daniel's, actually says No. 7, but this is Jack Daniel's Legacy Edition. So this is a special limited edition. So I think this is the third one that they've done. I don't know if the whiskey in the bottle is different between the different batches, but this is the one with the silver label. I believe they're all bottled at 43%, which is why I bought this one. I really like it because Jack Daniel's is a good distillery, but it needs that extra ABV to make it drinkable, in my opinion, because at 40%, as we get the Old No. 7 standard Jack Daniel's here in the UK, it's crap. So Jack Daniel's Legacy Edition. And in the third spot, we've got Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Select Tennessee Whiskey. So this is the really good stuff. At least here in the UK. We actually get this here in the supermarkets, which I'm really surprised about, because it's a bit on the pricey side if you pay full price, about £45–50, and it's quite a premium product. I think it's a really nice whiskey. It's a really nice bourbon, although they don't call it that, Tennessee whiskey, but it's a huge step up from the Old No. 7. And me personally, until I was able to get some of this Legacy Edition, which is quite a bit cheaper than the Single Barrel Select. Single Barrel Select was the one that I'd recommend all day long if you're looking for a Jack Daniel's product, because it's really rather good. But something that I've never done, because I've only just managed to get hold of the Legacy Edition, I've never actually tried these two against each other. I think in my review of these two whiskies, I did mention how they stacked up against each other, and from memory I think it's going to be pretty close. I think that despite this one being 2% ABV less, I think this one is a huge step up over the Old No. 7, and it's going to be pretty neck and neck between the Legacy Edition and the Single Barrel at 45%. What I am going to do in this video is keep these whiskies where they are, and I'm going to nose, taste and assess the finish on each one of them in order, because I have no confidence in my ability to not get confused with 3 glasses of whiskey on the table. It's hard enough when I've got 2 in front of me. You might have noticed that I keep them in the same hands so I can remember what is where. So I'm going to start with the Old No. 7, move on to the Legacy Edition, and finish up with the Single Barrel. Interesting little aside, I did actually notice that after I did my review of the Jack Daniel's Old No. 7, I actually got my first dislike on one of my YouTube reviews, and funnily enough, about a couple of hours after I got that dislike on the Jack Daniel's Old No. 7, a few other dislikes started popping up on some of my other videos, so I think I might have upset someone, possibly a Jack Daniel's fan. But this is all subjective. We all have to remember that this is all subjective, because whiskey is subjective. It's a subjective thing, as is taste. I'm not portraying myself as a whiskey expert, because I personally think when it's something as subjective as whiskey and your tastes, I think that it's impossible for anyone to be a whiskey expert. There are those of us that are experienced and those that are inexperienced, but I think that to call yourself a whiskey expert or a sommelier is very pretentious, and I don't pretend to attach that sort of authority to myself. So I think that if people disagree with my views, that's great, because when you're looking at something as subjective as taste and preference and the human palate, if everyone agreed, there's something suspicious with that. So the fact that people have different opinions on something that's subjective, that tells you that you're thinking for yourselves. So that's a great thing. because we should have different opinions on something as wonderful and subjective as whiskey. Anyway, Jack Daniel's Old Number 7, let's see what we've got. So on the nose of this one, it's exactly as I remember. It's basically a stereotypical bourbon. It's nutty, you've got some caramel and syrup in there, but you've also got some extremely extractive oak, some very dry tannic oak. And that's really what I've always disliked about this whiskey. At the low strength of 40%, you just don't get the sweetness carried over on that low strength to match the oaky notes, and I think it's really imbalanced, and it's really not to my liking. Obviously, a lot of people will drink this as a mixer or with ice, in which case it's possibly not so much of an issue, but it's really not for me. Let's see how it tastes. So, on the palate, I would describe that as a very stereotypical but thin and watery bourbon experience. It's very middle of the road. The fact that they call it Tennessee whiskey is a bit daft, really, because it's really your run-of-the-mill, doesn't stand out in any way bourbon, but it's thin and watery, and again you get that big hit of tannic oak at the end of the palate. As for the finish, it's a sweet finish, but it's also a short finish. So Jack Daniel's Old Number 7, let's put that back and move on to the Jack Daniel's Legacy Edition. So this one, when I reviewed it and when I first tried it, I was really pleased with this one because, as I mentioned before, I am quite a fan of Jack Daniel's distillery. It's just the standard expression that I really hate, but this stuff, big step up. Immediately on the nose, you can, if I had these two glasses hand in hand, the nose between them is entirely different, and in my opinion it's mainly, probably not solely, but mainly down to the ABV. That extra 3% just allows the sweetness more than anything else to carry over so much better. It's much sweeter, it's got much more body, and you're just getting more complexity. It's just a much better experience, and it's a shame because it's probably similar-ish whiskey. If you diluted this down to 40%, there probably wouldn't be much in it. Which is why I'm really thankful that, at least for now, we've got this Jack Daniel's Legacy Edition in stock here in the UK, and it's quite reasonably priced as well. I think I'm actually going to buy another bottle of this because, being a limited edition, I can't imagine that it's going to be around forever. And probably within the next couple of years we're going to be down to a choice of 40% or paying for the single barrel again. See how it tastes. As much fun as it is to slate Jack Daniel's, that, in my opinion, and I'm not a bourbon expert at all, I do like my scotch, I occasionally dabble in bourbon, but that is a bourbon that I wouldn't be ashamed to serve to any friends and family. It's got good body, it's got really nice sweetness, lots of sweet syrupy caramel notes that go really well with the nuttiness, some nice peanut brittle notes, little accent of mint, little spiciness, and a little bit of oak. It is quite an oaky bourbon, but that oakiness is kept in check perfectly by the sweetness, because we've got enough strength, enough alcohol in there to carry those flavours to make it a balanced experience. So that one, absolutely lovely. Reviewed this recently, it's exactly how I remember. Highly recommended. So now, let's compare that to the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Select. I think there are some different versions of this. This is not the barrel proof version, it's not the 100 proof or 50 vol version, it's the version that you see here in the UK in the supermarkets, and I think it's the the more widely available of the premium Jack Daniels. It's the one that's bottled at 45% ABV, and it comes in the square decanter, fancy looking bottle. And here in the UK, it sells for about £45, but quite often goes on offer down to about £25. And I really like it. I know I said I was going to keep the glasses where they are, but Legacy Edition, single barrel, I have to try these two properly head to head. Now that's really interesting. They're both, in my opinion, outstanding bourbons, but there's definitely a big difference there. I say big, they're both exceptional bourbons, but the Legacy Edition, you're getting lots of rounded caramel sweetness, good body, but on the single barrel, there's a note in there which I identify as an older whiskey, and I don't know if it's because the single barrel is significantly older than the Legacy Edition, or if it's just better matured, but I'm definitely picking up notes on the single barrel that scream to me that this is a more mature, better matured whiskey. So ever so slight hint of youth on the Legacy Edition, but nothing to worry about. But when you get to the single barrel, you've got that sweetness, and I think there's a touch more of that mint that you get in the Jack Daniel's Legacy Edition, but there's no youth. And what you have got on the single barrel is a lovely oiliness, lovely full and rich oily nuttiness. Yeah, that I'm actually completely wrong there. I expected them to be very close, but there is a noticeable step up in quality when you go from the Legacy Edition to the single barrel. Let's see how it tastes. Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Select. So yeah, Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Select. It definitely has more of a fullness to the palate, and in particular there's more chocolatey notes, and it's a rich, thick, luxurious, syrupy chocolatiness. It's more of a milk chocolate, and it's a really nice experience, and I must admit I do like it above the Legacy Edition. As to whether this difference is down to the fact that it's a better whiskey or it's got that extra 2%, I get the feeling it's probably a mix of the two. I think being bottled at 45% as opposed to 43 does help a little bit, but personally I think 43 is enough. It's a high enough strength to enjoy Jack Daniel's, but I think that the Single Barrel Select is a better made and a better matured whiskey. The only problem is, as I pointed out before on my review of the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Select, you do actually get variation from batch to batch, and they are small batches with the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Select. So your miles may vary, you may have a different experience, but this bottle in particular, I do think that it is a cut above the Legacy Edition. Let's just have a bit more. Actually, no. I'm going to try the Legacy Edition again, and then I'm going to try the Single Barrel. So, Legacy Edition, really wonderful whiskey. That nuttiness on the palate, it's really beautiful, really sweet nuttiness. You don't get that at all in the old number 7. Just going to compare it to the single barrel. But that is different again. before the whiskey even got to my lips there, as I was lifting the glass, I just got that rich, oily, sweet, syrupy, full, juicy, really wonderful aroma before I even got to the whiskey. But it's definitely a better whiskey. If anyone here in the UK, I don't know what this is like internationally, but you quite often get this on really good discount here in the UK, and I really recommend it, especially to anyone that's still drinking Jack Daniel's Old No. 7. At least treat yourself and get a bottle of this, because it's only slightly more expensive at the moment. But ideally, if you have the money, treat yourself to a bottle of this one day, and I think it'll really open your eyes. It's really good stuff. As to what I'm going to buy from now on, I don't buy bourbon or Tennessee whiskey that often, but when I do, if I'm buying something from a supermarket, it's probably going to be Jim Beam, or the cheap stuff from Lidl, the Western Gold from Lidl, or lately it's been the Jack Daniel's Legacy Edition, which I think is worth twice the price compared to the Old No. 7. But what about the Legacy Edition compared to the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel? Well, this stuff at the moment sells for £20-ish. This stuff, if you get it at full price, is over 40. And as much as this is a better whiskey, it is definitely not worth twice the price of this, because it's not that much better. It is better, but when it comes to paying twice the price, it's not that much better. So if you can get this for 20 and this is on the shelf for 40 or even 30, I'd probably stick with the Legacy Edition. But I do feel that this is probably going to be a limited edition, and we're probably going to be losing this fairly soon. At which point, single barrel all the way. So let me know in the comments what you thought. If you've tried any of these Jack Daniel's whiskies, or if you've tried a different Jack Daniel's and you think that that's the best whiskey in the world, let me know. And hopefully it'll be something that I can track down and I can try it and share my thoughts. But let me know what you thought, and let me know what you think of these head-to-head videos, because I'm not sure myself, to be honest. It's good to focus an entire review on one whiskey, because then you're really giving it your full attention. But as we've found out here, especially comparing the Legacy Edition and the Single Barrel, it's absolutely invaluable to try two whiskies together. It's such a shame when, say I'd had this bottle and then it had been finished and a year later I had this one, there would have been no way to get a truly objective sense of which one I preferred. And if you guys at home aren't doing this already, I totally recommend doing your own head-to-head comparisons, because it's a really great way of learning what you like and picking up differences between whiskey. It's a really good step in your whiskey journey and your whiskey education. So I think that's enough from me. I'm going to enjoy the rest of these two. The other one, not so much. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.